Please be seated. We are now in week 4 of our Esther series. I don't know about you, but I could use a recap, so here we go. Esther is a Jewish woman living in Persia, and she is queen. She is married to the king. Her adopted father is Mordecai, also a Jew. And Mordecai has run afoul of a guy named Haman. Haman is the second in command to the king, and Haman comes from a people that historically don't like the Jews anyway, but in this case, Haman has taken a particular dislike to Mordecai because Mordecai refuses to worship him. And Haman thinks he's pretty great. You heard that in this reading today, when Haman says, well, if the king wished to honor but me, Haman thinks pretty highly of himself. So the fact that Mordecai won't worship him really bothers him. And so his solution to that is, all right, well, we'll just kill Mordecai, and while we're at it, let's just kill all the Jews too. The king says, okay. That was week 1. In week 2, Mordecai goes to Esther, and they have a conversation. And Esther expresses to Mordecai, you don't just go to the king and tell him what to do, and it's very scary, the thought of having to approach him and ask him to not do this thing. And Mordecai responds with the theme verse for this series, which is on the cover of your bulletin. Perhaps you were born for such a time as this. That's what he tells Esther. Week 3, which was last week, we found Esther waiting outside the court of the king. Because you don't just go talk to the king. The king has to say, he has to hold out his scepter and then say it's time for you to come in. So she hangs out there, and she's in her best. She looks amazing. Because as we heard last week, she knows that this king loves 3 things. He loves beautiful women, he loves parties, and he loves wine. So she waits out there, right, and waits for the king to summon her. The king summons her in, and he says, you are so beautiful. I will give you anything you want, even half my kingdom. Now, if that was me, I'd have been like, save my people. Just get it over with, get it done. But Esther doesn't do that. Esther says, let me throw you a party. And the king's like, okay, great, because he loves parties, and he loves wine, and he's going to have all 3. He's got beautiful women, parties, and wine. So he says, okay, great. She throws him a party, and he says, okay, now really, what do you really want? And she says, does anybody remember what she says? I'm going to throw you another party. That's right. And now we come to this week. We come to this week where it's the night after that first party, but before the second. And the king can't sleep. Doesn't say why he can't sleep. It doesn't tell us. But it tells us what he does. He goes and he looks through the annals. Now, maybe you've had nights where things bother you and you can't sleep. All right? I'm guessing that probably happens to all of us. I had a few nights like that this week. Talked to my cousin. He works in elevators. He's like, I have nights where I can't sleep sometimes, where stuff bothers me, right? So that happens to all of us. If I get up in the middle of the night and I go to look at my DTE energy bill from 3 months ago, all right? The reason I'm doing that is because there's something in my head that tells me that there's something wrong with my DTE energy bill. All right? So obviously the king is up because he knows that something is wrong, but he doesn't know what. And what he finds in these annals is this record of this thing that Mordecai did, which I mentioned very briefly in week 1, but didn't really spend a lot of time on. We don't know a whole lot about it except what we read here, which is that there was a plot to assassinate the king, and Mordecai found out about it, right? And he turned them in. He made sure that the king was able to put these guys away and made sure that the king could survive. So the king reads this, and he goes, wait a minute. The whole reason that this whole Mordecai Jew thing is happening is because Haman told me that Mordecai is not loyal. And the Jews are not loyal. They're not a loyal people. That's the whole reason that we're doing this. But this tells me that he's incredibly loyal. he thinks about it a little bit more. And he's like, and then there's Esther, right? She's a Jew. And I would have given her anything that she wanted. And what she chose was to throw a party for me. And then when I said to her, no, really, I'll give you whatever you want, what she said again is she's going to throw a party for me. She must really love me. She must. And this guy, Mordecai, he's faithful and loyal. These Jewish people, wait a minute. They're not what this guy Haman says at all. And then the king starts to think. And if you think about it from the perspective of a king, and you start wondering, why would my second in command want me to murder an entire people who are faithful and loyal? Yeah, he's thinking there's going to be a coup here, right? And think about Esther. Think about all of this that she did to bring it to this point, right? She knew this king. She knew that this king, look, he loved beautiful women. He loved parties. He loved wine. But we learned something else from Pastor Beth about what he loves. What he really loves more than anything is himself. That's right. Remember, this guy in his court and in his palace had filled it with statues of himself, right? You go to my house, you'll see a couple pictures of me, but I'm like with people, you know? And there's other people in the pictures, okay? It's not just all me. You know, kings at this time, yeah, they would put up statues, maybe a statue of themselves, but they'd have an old king and a god, and it would be kind of interesting. This guy loved himself. Esther knew that if she just told him, save my people is what I want, he'd be like, maybe he'd do it, maybe he wouldn't. You don't know. And what she also knew is that if her people got saved with that initial moment, if she goes to the king and says, I'll give you whatever I want, just save my people, maybe, just maybe, Haman will come back later. Maybe he'll come around and he'll do something else. It doesn't get rid of the threat permanently, it just gets rid of the threat now. And so she's stacked the deck. She's lined up all these cards, one after the other. And the king is playing the hand that she dealt, and he doesn't even know it. Could you do that? Like, I play strategy games for fun. Like, that's what I do in my spare, it's one of the things I do in my spare time. I couldn't do that. She's got this incredible ability to perceive the king, to know what he is, to know what he wants, to set it up so that her people can be saved, not just today, but forever. And oh, by the way, Haman gets humiliated along the way by having to do for Mordecai what he thought was done for himself. And you know what's interesting? Is Esther never appears in this reading. She's not in it at all. She's just the one who stacked the deck and gave the king the cards to play. And that's what God has done in this story. If you remember, God doesn't appear in the story at all. But God is the one who has created that deck, who has stacked that deck, who created Esther. She was born for such a time as this. God is the one who gave her these gifts, all this talent and knowledge. You know, she's not the kind of person you want to sit down at the poker table with, y'all. You know, she's not the one. She's got all these amazing gifts. And God has set it up and woven those gifts together in this circumstance. So now she's at the point where she's turned the tables. And that's how God works. In you and in me and in all of us. Weaving things together that we can't even see or understand. Making us, shaping us, gifting us, and then putting us in times and places where those gifts that you and I have that maybe we don't even think are gifts at all can be used to bless people, to praise God in worship, to love and serve our neighbors, to bless our families. God's been weaving all these things together. And yeah, we're going to make mistakes along the way. And yeah, we're going to screw stuff up. And we're going to say things we shouldn't, and do things we shouldn't, and say things we regret, and do things we regret. And that's going to be me and you and all of us. But along the way, there are these moments. And hopefully your moment doesn't come when your people are in peril, right? That would be a good thing. Be a good thing. We prefer to avoid that. But they happen. And I think my prayer for all of us is that we can see our gifts rather than the things we do wrong. And that we can realize that God has been at work in our lives the whole time. And celebrate those moments when they come. And give thanks and praise to God for them when they show up. When we see what God has been doing. And we get to be the ones to bless someone else. That's my prayer for us. And as for Haman, and what happens to him after this, what the king finally does, well, to find that out, you're going to have to come back for one more week.